Welcome to Cat Eye US Stock. We watch markets with calm focus and sharp instincts. Why did software stocks crash so suddenly? And why does this matter, even if you don't own a single tech name? Oh, and why are high-paid white-collar jobs suddenly part of this story? Last week, something snapped in the market. In just a few trading days, roughly $285 billion in SaaS market value vanished. Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, Atlassian, Adobe, even giants like Microsoft and Oracle. This wasn't a recession story. It wasn't collapsing demand. It wasn't some earnings disaster. It was a realization. Wall Street finally caught up to something developers, lawyers, analysts, operators have felt for months. AI is no longer just helping software, it's skipping it. And when software gets bypassed, the SaaS business model starts to crack. This sell-off isn't really about stocks. Stocks are just where the problem shows up last. This is about work. Tasks disappearing, workflows compressing, one AI agent doing what used to require 10 licensed seats. In the last two episodes, we looked at what leaders said about AI and jobs and what the data shows AI is already doing. This episode connects the final dot. When AI replaces tasks, software revenue and human labor start to decouple at the same time. Why do people panic about jobs before they panic about markets? Why did ordinary workers feel this shift before Wall Street dumped SaaS stocks? And why does that matter for understanding last week's crash? Before we get into charts, valuations, or SaaS multiples, we need to start with something more basic: why people care way more about AI and jobs than AI and stocks. Most people don't wake up worrying about Salesforce's revenue multiple. They wake up wondering, does my work still matter? When AI shows up in your job, it doesn't announce itself as a revolution. It sneaks in quietly. First, you notice something that used to take an hour now takes 10 minutes. Then you're asked to handle more work with the same team. Then you notice junior roles just stop getting hired, and then suddenly the workflow changes, not the job title, at least not yet. That's why job anxiety always comes first. Markets react to numbers, people react to friction disappearing. By the time Wall Street finally sees revenue risk, employees have already felt task compression for months. That's also why the last two episodes on this channel matter. First, Davos talked about AI and jobs in theory. Then the Anthropic Economic Index showed us what AI is actually doing, task by task, workflow by workflow. Now we're in phase 3. The market is finally catching up to what workers already sensed. Last week's SaaS crash didn't come out of nowhere. It arrived after people started realizing something uncomfortable. AI isn't just helping them go faster, it's quietly making parts of their work unnecessary. So this story doesn't start on Wall Street. It starts at the desk, inside real workflows, long before stock prices move. And once you see that, the so-called SaaSpocalypse suddenly makes a lot more sense. Why did so many software stocks crash at the same time? Because this wasn't a normal sell-off. There was no CPI shock, no surprise rate hike, no earnings collapse. Yet SaaS names across customer relationship management, workflow design, legal tech, analytics, they all sold off together. That tells you this wasn't about last quarter. It was about future usefulness. For years, SaaS investors underwrote the same basic story: more seats, more users, more workflows locked inside the product. Now picture an AI agent that doesn't log in, doesn't click buttons, doesn't care about your beautifully crafted UI, and still finishes the task without ever opening the app. That's not competition, that's bypass. Markets don't panic when software gets cheaper, they panic when software becomes optional. Why did SaaS feel unstoppable for almost 2 decades? Because every workflow required a paid human sitting in front of a screen. Before we talk about agents, we need to be clear about what SaaS really sells. SaaS doesn't actually sell software. It sells licensed human activity inside a workflow. Customer relationship tools don't close deals. Project management tools don't finish projects. Accounting software doesn't reconcile the books. People do. SaaS just organizes, tracks, and records what humans are already doing. That's why the pricing model is per seat, per month. As long as work required humans clicking through interfaces, SaaS revenue scaled naturally with headcount. More employees meant more licenses. More licenses meant predictable, recurring revenue. That's the economic engine Wall Street fell in love with. Is AI just making SaaS more efficient? No, it's removing the need for humans to use it in the first place. Agents don't use software the way people do. They don't open dashboards. They don't sit through onboarding sessions. They don't care about UX. They just complete the task. Once execution moves from humans to agents, the seat-based model starts to fail. You don't buy a Salesforce license for an AI agent, you give it API access. And once work bypasses the UI, the SaaS mode erodes fast. Why did SaaS stocks crash before earnings actually fell? Because markets don't wait for income statements. They price broken models early. Last week's SaaS crash wasn't about one bad quarter. It wasn't about weak guidance, foreign exchange headwinds, or a missed KPI. It was about future math. For 20 years, SaaS growth followed a simple formula. More employees at the customer means more seats, means more revenue. Hire more salespeople. You buy more Salesforce licenses, add more engineers. You pay for more Jira, more GitHub, more continuous integration tools. Wall Street loved this because it scaled automatically with headcount. Agents quietly break that link. If one human can supervise the output of 5 or 10, then customers don't need to buy more seats to grow. Output rises, revenue doesn't. That's the crack investors saw. And it goes deeper. When agents complete workflows directly, filing tickets, migrating data, triggering deployments, usage decouples from licenses entirely. You don't need 20 Jira seats if an agent is closing the tickets. You don't need 10 CRM users if an agent keeps the records updated. The dashboard isn't where the value lives anymore. The value is in execution, and agents don't buy seats. So Wall Street didn't just see a slowdown. It saw a structural ceiling, a hard limit on expansion revenue, pressure on margins, and a reset of valuation multiples that assumed near infinite seat growth. That's why hundreds of billions of dollars vanished in days, not because SaaS became useless, but because the pricing logic that powered its rise no longer scales the same way. What if software didn't wait for you to operate it, but operated itself? That's what OpenClaw changes. Traditionally, software assumes humans are the execution engine. You open Jira, copy an ID, log into Salesforce, export data, paste it into a spreadsheet, then bounce back to update a ticket. None of that is hard work. It's coordination, clicking, copying, checking, and shuttling information between systems. OpenClaw flips that assumption. You don't use software anymore, you delegate outcomes. Instead of assigning work to a person, you write something that looks like a ticket. Migrate these customer accounts, verify billing, notify sales. From there, the agent takes over. It doesn't ask which button to click. It lays out the steps, picks which systems to touch, navigates screens or APIs, handles authentication, and executes the work end to end. If a step fails, a timeout, a permission issue, a schema mismatch, it doesn't just stop, it retries. It adapts, it moves forward. To see why that matters, picture a real developer. A senior engineer at a SaaS company doesn't spend most of the week writing brilliant algorithms. They spend it being glue, reading Jira tickets, checking Salesforce, verifying Stripe invoices, rerunning deployments, posting updates in Slack. OpenClaw absorbs that entire layer of work. The engineer doesn't disappear, but their role shifts. They stop being the person who does the work and become the person who supervises outcomes. And that's the key shift. The change isn't just intelligence, it's agency. This is no longer software helping a user. This is software becoming the operator of other software and quietly removing the need for large execution teams. Why does SaaS need a beautiful UI if no human ever sees it? Anthropic's plugin model quietly raises that question. And it's deeply unsettling for traditional software companies. Plugins don't expose screens. They expose actions. In the old SaaS world, value lived in the interface. You trained users, onboarded teams, built dashboards, menus, workflows, certifications. Software companies didn't just sell functionality, they sold habits. Plugins break that. Instead of teaching a human how to use software, you grant an agent permission. You may create invoices. You may modify customer records. You may trigger deployments. Once permission is granted, the UI becomes optional. The agent doesn't care if a workflow takes 5 clicks or 50. It never forgets a step. It never needs retraining. It never complains about UX. Work moves, server-side, execution happens through APIs, and this is where SaaS differentiation starts to erode. When agents can call actions directly, dashboards stop being moats. Workflow polish stops being defensible. Feature checklists stop mattering. If every product is reduced to a set of callable actions, a lot of SaaS tools start to look interchangeable. So what's left as the moat? Not UI, but data ownership, permissions, audit trails, compliance, security, trust boundaries. Anthropic isn't just building plugins. It's quietly rewriting what software interfaces are for, and removing humans from the loop wherever possible. If agents are so powerful, why hasn't everything been automated already? Because speed is not the same thing as reliability. Yes, agents are fast. A task that took a human 2 hours might take an agent 2 minutes. But as tasks stretch across multiple systems, CRM, billing, legal, deployment errors start to compound. A tiny mistake early on doesn't just fail one step, it poisons everything downstream. That's where verification creeps back in. Humans check outputs, humans validate assumptions, humans rerun parts of the workflow, and suddenly half the time savings evaporate. So the real constraint today isn't model capability, it's trust. Organizations are willing to let agents execute, but not fully decide. That's why the dominant pattern right now isn't full automation, it's human-in-the-loop collaboration. Let's get specific. Who actually took the hit? This wasn't random. It wasn't just sector rotation. This was type of work exposure getting repriced. Start with legal and compliance tech. LegalZoom dropped over 20%. Thomson Reuters fell nearly 18%. RELX sold off in the double digits. Why law? Because legal work is language, logic and pattern recognition, drafting contracts, reviewing clauses, comparing precedents, flagging risky language. Those are exactly the domains large language models handle well. Even if AI doesn't replace lawyers outright, it collapses the hours. One associate plus an agent can now do what used to take a small team. The billing model weakens long before the profession disappears. Next, IT services and outsourcing. Infosys down sharply, Wipro sold off, Accenture hit hard. These companies sell labor arbitrage, large teams, long contracts, billable hours. But what happens when AI agents can migrate code bases, generate test cases, refactor systems, and run quality assurance automatically? If a customer can get the same outcome with fewer people, why pay for an army of engineers? The threat isn't that AI writes perfect code. It's that it removes the need for large execution teams, the core economic engine of outsourcing. Third, developer tools. Atlassian sliding toward 52-week lows. Ask yourself a simple question. If AI agents write code, fix bugs, open and close tickets, and update status automatically, how much value is left in manually managing thousands of Jira issues? The tool doesn't vanish, the seat count does. Finally, creative and document software. Adobe's market cap dropped from roughly $350 billion to barely above $100 billion. Intuit fell nearly 11%. When non-professionals can generate high-quality designs, reports, tax drafts, and documents with plain language, the high-skill UI moat gets filled in. You don't need years of training to reach good enough. This wasn't some wild AI hype trade. It was the market realizing something uncomfortable. Some software categories are priced like tools, but behave economically, like labor substitutes. Here's a mistake markets often make. They confuse UI replacement with system replacement. Salesforce and ServiceNow aren't just dashboards. They're systems of record. They hold the source of truth. Customer data, case histories, access permissions, audit logs. Even in a world full of agents, enterprises still need secure databases, role-based access control, and compliance tracking. An AI agent can update a CRM record, but it still needs a place where that record lives. That's why not all SaaS is equally exposed. Tools that mainly help humans click faster are vulnerable, but platforms that anchor enterprise data and governance are much harder to rip out. Think about a bank, a hospital, a heavily regulated enterprise. You can't let an agent freely mutate customer records with no permissions. You need logs. You need traceability. You need someone accountable when something goes wrong. That's where Salesforce, ServiceNow, and similar platforms still matter. Agents may bypass the interface, but they depend on the data layer. So SaaS doesn't disappear, it loses the interface premium. It stops being the thing humans use every day and becomes infrastructure that agents quietly operate on top of. The market often overshoots on first contact. The real differentiation isn't UI anymore, it's data ownership, trust boundaries, and compliance. Here's another version of that same mistake. Confusing UI replacement with system replacement. Salesforce, ServiceNow. These aren't just buttons and dashboards, they are systems of record, the source of truth, the permission layer, the audit log. That's not a side detail. That's the line between a tool and a foundation. Because even with agents everywhere, enterprises still need secure databases, access control, and compliance tracking. An agent can do work, but it still needs a trusted place where that work gets recorded, governed, and audited. Think about a regulated organization, a bank, a hospital, a government contractor. Customer data is not just data, it's liability. Who changed a record matters. When it changed matters, why it changed matters. And if something breaks, someone has to answer for it. Agents may bypass the UI, but they don't bypass governance. They still need permissioning, who can view, create, edit, approve. They still need audit trails, what happened, in what order, with what authorization. They still need data integrity, one source of truth, not 5 conflicting ones. So SaaS doesn't vanish, it just loses the interface premium. The pretty dashboard stops being the value. The value becomes the underlying rails, data models, workflows, permissions, compliance, logs. Software turns into plumbing, less glamorous, still essential. And that's why some SaaS names may have been punished too aggressively. Agents can replace clicking, but replacing the system of record in the messy, regulated, real enterprise world is a very different fight. Now let's talk about the real winners. Not old-school SaaS, not AI-powered tools with a chatbot bolted onto the side. The winners are agent-native applications. These companies don't sell software seats. They don't ask how many employees you have. They don't price off headcount at all. They sell outcomes. Instead of 10 CRM licenses, they sell a qualified sales lead. Instead of legal software, they sell a reviewed, approved contract. Instead of finance tools, they sell a completed reconciliation. Instead of analytics dashboards, they sell a finished report. That's a fundamental shift in how software makes money. pricing moves from per user to per result, from access to execution, from tools to labor replacement. And notice what disappears in this model. There's no seat expansion, there's no onboarding curve, there's no training budget. You don't ask how many people are using this, you ask, did the work get done? That's why this matters so much to markets, because once software is priced by outcome, it competes directly with labor, not just with other software. A company doesn't compare an agent to another SaaS vendor. They compare it to hiring another employee. And when that comparison starts to favor machines, the entire revenue logic of traditional SaaS gets challenged. That's why the market panicked. Not because AI suddenly got smarter overnight, but because a new class of companies emerged that doesn't depend on human usage at all. This isn't just better software, it's software that replaces labor directly and charges for the work, not the tool. Thank you for watching Cat Eye US Stock. Stay curious, stay calm, and we'll see you next time.